Stage 2 of the StarLadder Budapest Major is here, which means we had another first day of 16 goddamn hell-ass best of ones, and once again, it was utterly chaos. From FaZe rising from the ashes like a fucking phoenix reborn to go 2-0 exiting the day, to Team Liquid looking diabolically, apocalyptically, indubitably down so bad that I'm not even sure they're gonna win a single map before they exit stage left. We also saw a surprising mix of teams find success on this first day, with Na'Vi proving to be one of the most dominant teams in the field, as well as NIP and Bait, after struggling here and there in stage 1, striking out with a strong start in this second stage. Once again, because we are talking about so many best of ones, we're going to keep things condensed, short, and concise, and we'll start breaking down series more in depth as we head into the best of threes. If you guys enjoyed this faster recap format, you can show me by leaving a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Help me hit 10k subs by the end of the year. Also, if you're on mobile, hype the video. It's a new feature from YouTube that helps the video do much better in the YouTube algorithm, and I'd really appreciate it. Without any further ado, let's thank today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by SkinsMonkey, a CS2 trading website. You put in the skins that you want to trade, you select what you want, you use my code LionHeartZ for up to $5 off, or click the top link in the description, and boom, new drip.
Nice.
You can also use my code for a 35% deposit bonus if you want to buy with real money. And they have a free section with cool giveaways. So check the top link in the description, use my code to buy 15 Dragon Lores to let them know I sent you their way, and thank you to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. Alright, so right at the top, I want you guys to know I've been listening to your feedback for some of these condensed format videos, and to make things a little bit easier to follow if you are watching alongside, I'm going to keep the game result that I'm talking about in the top left corner of the screen, and that'll change as we move game to game. The footage in the background is still mostly going to be random, just because that's easier than having to grab clips from 16 different matches. Hopefully you guys understand. I will sync up things more and more as we refine ourselves down to fewer and fewer games to cover day to day. Anyways, we kicked off day 1 of stage 2 with NIP taking on Astralis on Nuke, where NIP started off their stage 2 run with a victory 13-10. Kaspersky looked amazing, Wrinkle had a great performance against Device in the head-to-head, and unfortunately for Astralis, despite them being very good on Nuke, their firepower really lagged behind, with Hooksy being basically unplayable, and Device really starting to show his age and not be able to compete and bring that star power in a way that this team really requires. Stair, of course, looked really good, and so did Gabby, but it feels like more and more that Stair is kind of the one good piece holding together this sinking ship. I think that's borne out by the fact that Astralis, spoiler alert, are going to end up going 0-2 throughout today's proceedings. For NIP, much stronger start compared to their day 1 loss in stage 1. Frankly, they just continue to look better. I feel more and more validated about my faith in them reflected in my pick'em strategies, because I think this team is legitimately being slept on. We then move over to Inferno for our second game of the day, where Fnatic took on 3D Max. This was a one-sided affair, with Fnatic taking a quick victory 13-6. Unfortunately, despite my faith in 3D Max to make it out of this stage, this was not the start you would have wanted. They looked very weak, very unprepared for this Fnatic team, and the end result is only 2 3D Max players reaching double-digit kills in Lucky and Body. Meanwhile, BlameF, Crims, and Jacasmo just cruised along, all having fantastic performances. My logic behind picking 3D Max to make it out of the stage is their sturdiness and depth in terms of T-side tactics, and a lot of that consistency came from the fact that while they may not have any marquee names, they would always be able to put out a good average performance in terms of firepower. But as of late in the build to the major, that has started to slip. I hope that the time away right before the major started would have been good for them, but at least out the gate right now, they are not meeting expectations. Sticking to the one-sided games, we had Tyloo taking on Paravision on Mirage, where Tyloo took a swift, dominant 13-5 victory. And again, I got a lot of hate for picking Paravision to go 0-3, but this kind of start against Tyloo I thought wasn't outside the realm of possibility. And while AW was heavily criticized as one of Paravision's worst pieces in the first stage, he was electric in this opening game, going for 20-16. However, everyone else kind of let him down. Jame and Belchanok both having 5 and 4 kills respectively over the course of the entire map is simply unacceptable. Meanwhile, for Tyloo, G and Jamyoung led the way, going for 17 kills each. And with Jamyoung's aggressive rifling and G's consistent opping right behind him, this is the Tyloo that managed to impress at many different points earlier in the year. However, it wouldn't really maintain itself for the rest of day 1. And then for one of our first notable teams to look at, we had FaZe taking on Passion UA. Obviously, we all know how rocky FaZe have looked, and Passion, while they are not a side to be feared in most cases, Grim and Halzerg deserve a lot of respect, and they could take a map off you before you can blink. However, FaZe took a great map 1 victory 13-10 on Dust 2, and good news, Brokey led the way. Not only was he the top frag for FaZe, he tied Grim for the highest total kills in the lobby, going 20-13 with a 1.49 rating. It was an efficient, smooth game from Brokey, not too many missed op shots, more on that in just a fucking minute. But overall, as much as I think Brokey needs to be kicked right now, this was a damn solid game from him, and that's nice. Also, notably, and this will be more impactful later on, Jacob had a good series, not necessarily by total score going 17-20, but he had good pockets of impact, which seeing him heat up early on Dust 2 proved to be pivotal towards FaZe's later success in the second round of best of ones. For Passion, you were in the hunt to make this a winnable series. If Halzerg had been a little bit more effective, he ends with 14-12 on a .97 rating, then this really could have been a series you could have won. You had great input from some of the lesser pieces like Nick X and Kevem. Grim maintained his average standard of quality. If Halzerg was a little bit better, I think Passion could have taken this early victory. Heading back into blowout territory, we go over to Aurora versus M80 once again on Dust 2. And unfortunately for M80, while Aurora can definitely throw away games whenever they decide, when Wakadia and Woxic walk up and play this good, they're going to be very hard to deal with. Wakadia had a 16-7 first half CT side, and even though M80 kept it close at 7-5, this was the rare time where the T side calling hit for Aurora, and they simply ran over M80 in the second half, holding them to only one round. Woxic would go 10-1 on that T side second half, and the game would basically be over in a blink of an eye. Definitely a tough look for M80 after going 3-0 so triumphantly in Stage 1, but you also drew one of the best teams in this bracket, so it is what it is. We then easily had the harshest reality check of Stage 2 so far, with Na'Vi thumping FlyQuest on Train 13-2, including a 12-0 CT side sweep in the first half. Bit went thermonuclear on FlyQuest, ending the game going 20-4 with a 2.33 rating. Pretty much everyone was feasting. For FlyQuest, everyone came down to earth except for JKS, who managed to fight a valiant game going 10-13 with a 0.98 rating. But hey, you guys got slapped in the mouth. Train can be a very brutal map, especially if you have to start on the T side. Na'Vi, they just blitzed them, which is really good for Na'Vi because they start off with very strong momentum, which they'll carry through into the rest of the day. For FlyQuest, just like M80, you gotta lick your wounds and just move on. And then my waking nightmare began as Team Liquid took on Bait on Mirage, where they got fucking punted 13-7. Liquid looked awful at every point in this game. Their CT side was uncoordinated, undisciplined. There was nothing they could do to stop Bait's attempts at map control. There was an extreme over-reliance on individual excellence and trying to break into rounds. Shuhei would push to stupid areas constantly on the CT side and die for nothing. There was blatant miscommunication where like Ultimate would die to a player rush down mid with a Mac 10, and then Nerds would just peek top mid from Catwalk and not even check the bench and just die for no reason. This was an ugly, terrible, awful start for Team Liquid. After they hyped themselves up so good with, the boot camp went great, we're feeling good, Alicia's looking great, balled as usual, and then they walk into the server and lay up a lemon against a very beatable Bait. Now, obviously, I'm a little salty as I took Liquid, shockingly so, to be one of my 3-0 teams. My rationale at the time, and of course it didn't work out in retrospect, was that, you have teams like Liquid and Aurora that are inherently very inconsistent, and with the benefit of the better IGL and coach in theory in Shuhei and Flashies, I thought Liquid could come in with a good fundamental floor. We could see Nerds, Naf, and Elise really hold down the firepower with any of these teams toe-to-toe, and that would limit the liability of Ultimate, who is so game-to-game. Instead, there was nothing. There was no structure, no hope, nothing to look forward to. They were even worse in their second game of the day. More on that in just a minute. And I'm looking at Liquid and I'm not even sure they're going to be able to win a game before they exit this fucking major. That's how poor they played today. I will save my nuclear rant about Shuhei for the second match of the day. For Bait, this was an incredible turnaround. They looked much stronger, better coordinated. This looked like the Bait that people were expecting to 3-0 in Stage 1. They didn't show any noticeable gaps and allowed Liquid shenanigans to get in their heads. They played just a damn good game of Counter-Strike. And then wrapping up round 1, we had Imperial thumping MIBR on Nuke 13-5. not much more to be said here. Try continues to be one of the best players at the major so far in terms of overall rating, especially as an opper that's not on many people's radars. He is fragging out of his fucking mind. And MIBR, they're a dysfunctional, somewhat international team that tried to do a Furia, and unfortunately the pieces they picked did not instantly become best players in the world like Yakindar and Molodoy did. Instead it's Kickert, who's bad, and Klim, who is okay. Just once again and forever, please get Insani out of this team, bro. Let him flourish on an actual good Brazilian roster, please. And with that, we reload the brackets, all the players hit the Benjamin one time, and we get back on the stage. We start off with NIP taking on Tai Lu on Nuke. NIP would go 2-0 after beating Tai Lu 13-8. Once again, this team just looks really good on Nuke in general. Kaspersky, once again, top frags going 20-11, but Ujrix and Schuss are right behind him. Wrinkle also putting up back-to-back good map performances. This is NIP as an engine running through this round of Swiss with just piston-like regularity, and frankly, I feel so validated about my confidence in this team. Looking ahead, I really think they have a great shot to beat FaZe tomorrow in the 2-0 game. Frankly, they couldn't have asked for a more vulnerable opponent, because out of Na'Vi or Bait, I'm taking the bet against FaZe because we know FaZe can just shit the bed randomly. Meanwhile, NIP, they are kind of like the anti-FaZe. They have this great structured system with Snappy at the head. They're young, they're fun, they get a lot of impact out of their op. Imagine that being a thing. I could be wrong, and FaZe magic is one hell of a drug. But I think NIP have a great shot to stun everybody and go 3-0 tomorrow. We then had FlyQuest's Nightmare continue into round 2, where they got beat soundly by 3D Max 13-7 on Inferno. Unfortunately, it seems like FlyQuest are in full-scale retreat. Vexite has cratered back to Earth. He was not good in the opening round. He goes 7 for 17 here. I really think FlyQuest might be exiting tomorrow unless they make a huge turnaround. My logic in expecting them to go through to stage 3 was oftentimes teams that go 3-0 in stage 1 continue that momentum into stage 2 to some extent. Look no further than Legacy at the Blast Austin Major. So I think there was potential for them to make it out off that basis. And they had, honestly, a pretty fair bracket draw. Na'Vi are definitely one of the highest seeded teams, but we all know how vulnerable they can be on any given day. So there was a window where FlyQuest could have even gone 2-0, but instead they just didn't bring that firepower that dazzled in stage 1, and now they're facing elimination. For 3D Max, you stop the bleeding, you take a good win, you stay alive in that 1-1 bracket. That's about as good as you could ask for. We then had a damn close game between Na'Vi and Imperial on Mirage, where Na'Vi eked out a victory 13-10. This game was tied up 10-10 at one point, where Na'Vi made a breakthrough with Wonderful on a hero rifle buy that managed to be the difference maker in terms of winning this match. It broke the economy for Imperial, and that about wrapped it up. But up until that point, Imperial did a good job of going ban for ban with Na'Vi in this game, once again really impressing me with their overall quality at Counter-Strike. For Na'Vi, it was nice to see Wonderful have such good impact. He had an insane Deagle 4K earlier in the game as well. I have to say, and this is also measured by the fact that we're talking about best of ones as well as level of competition, but so far the average firepower from Na'Vi has been quite good. Emma and Wonderful haven't felt like as much of liabilities, and Makaze and Bit have remained consistent. Now, I'm certainly biased, but Na'Vi have their 2-0 game tomorrow against Bait. I expect them to be favorites and win that, but also that series could be very close. I would not be surprised to see it go 3 maps, and Bait can definitely win it. For the sake of my pick'ems though, I need Na'Vi to pull through on that one. We then had more heartbreak for Astralis as they dropped a very close map to M80, 13-11 on Ancient. This one came down to a lot of heroics. Lake had a massive clutch early on to the second half, a big 1v3, where honestly I think Hooksy overextended and kind of gave him a window into this round, but that's neither here nor there. Also, way later on, it's an 11-8 scoreline. Magisk is stuck in cave on the B side. The bomb is planted. 4 CTs on the site, no one looking at him. He gets a 4K, but they barely snake the defuse right underneath his nose. It would have been an insane 1v4 for Magisk. Instead, it's match point for M80. And even though Astralis battle it back and bring it to the last round of regulation, they slip up on that final T round and give M80 that victory, meaning Astralis are now looking at the 0-2 bracket. The very disappointing part for Astralis is that they wasted a nearly stair 30 bomb, going 29-17 with a 1.53 rating. Magisk right behind him with 23 kills. Both of them had way more kills than any other player on M80, but then Yabby 10-16, Device 11-15. just dragging down the star output from the two players above them and putting Astralis in such a difficult position where I'm not sure how they make it onto day 3 of this event from here. Bottom line is, if you're M80, you feel like you just stole that game away, so you'll take whatever win you can get. We then had probably one of the most boring games of the day, Passion UA against MIBR on Mirage. Passion UA take a 13-10 victory. I have very little to say about this game. I don't even think I watched it live because there were other games going on that were more interesting. Insani, bottom frags once again, which looks real bad. Klim looked great going 23-15. Exit also looked quite good at 19-13. And then Passion UA, you had JT lead the way going 19-16 himself. It was actually a rare bad game from Grim, and normally that would spell disaster. But even with the good output out of Klim, MIBR just couldn't get it over the line. And frankly, this is kind of why I expected them to go 0-3. So we'll see how that pans out tomorrow. And then, in classic FaZe fashion, a game that made me cry, scream, and yell in joy and pain, they managed to beat Aurora 13-10 on Dust 2, despite it feeling like I was pulling teeth the entire time. The first narrative right at the top, this was Jacob's best game in FaZe, point blank period. He went 24-14 with a 1.53 rating. He had that massive clutch on the CT side, multiple insane multi-kill entry rounds. He looked like, honestly, a respectable tier 1 player, which is more than you can hardly ever say about him in any other game. This was Jacob when FaZe really needed it, stepping up to the plate and delivering. And considering that Brokey put up one of the worst fucking games I have ever seen, we really needed that. I swear to God, I tweeted out in the middle of this game after watching Brokey miss 4 of the easiest, not even looking at him, back-turned op shots of my life, that Brokey needed to be benched mid-match. He ended the game with a 5-9 scoreline, which means he didn't do anything. There were so many rounds where he didn't do anything. He just lived and survived. He's just throwing nades. He doesn't contribute. It's so maddening watching this man with the most expensive gun in the game do fucking nothing. This is why I put zero stock into good Brokey games, because the good Brokey games are aberrations. They don't last. This is Brokey. This is who he is. He nearly fucked FaZe out of this game at multiple points. And if it wasn't for Jacob and Twists carrying the torch and making that happen, Brokey, dude, I would have, the things I would have said, get this man off this team now. So it happened. FaZe bullshit. 2-0. They could go 3-0 right now. Wouldn't surprise me. But win or lose, Brokey will inevitably put up a dog shit game at some point tomorrow, and I'm going to hate it. And speaking of hatred, Paravision 13-3 against Team Liquid on Dust 2. Holy shit. I am so done. Liquid, they are cooked. They are burnt. They are absolutely done, dusted, diabolically down bad, and there is nothing left for this team but to lose tomorrow and figure out what's next. I'm going to be honest. I have been one of Shuhei's biggest defenders, alright? I am running out of time to defend Shuhei because his calling doesn't look good, his individual playmaking doesn't look good, he loses rounds single-handedly with his over-aggressive plays on both sides, and I don't know what he's bringing to the table because the T sides haven't developed, they haven't gotten better, and this team is only getting more inconsistent over time. They should be cruising through this stage of the major, and instead they are facing elimination. Best of ones aside, and the best of ones are still a problem, guys, don't get me wrong, the best of ones still suck, but this team should be good enough with the players on it that the best of ones don't matter. Good teams rise above format, and Liquid can't rise above shit. And it ruined my Paravision 03 pick, so fuck you, Liquid. And then Bait beat Fnatic 13-11 on Ancient. Good job, Bait. Fnatic, you're good. I don't care. I'm so pissed off about fucking Liquid. I can't get out of my head. That's it. I'm out. End of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. 10K subs by the end of the year. Hype the video on mobile. Thank you to Skins Monkey. Thank you to our channel members. Follow me on Twitch TV/LionHeartZ CS2. Liquid down bad forever. Peace.